I need you to believe me. Every word I'm about to say sounds impossible, but I swear on whatever life I have left, it happened. People think horror lives in stories. In nightmares, you can shake off when the morning light breaks through the blinds. But sometimes the nightmare doesn't end when you wake up. Sometimes it stands outside your window and smiles back at you. I'll never forget that night. The silence was heavy, like the air itself knew something was wrong. My house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your heartbeat sound like a drum in your own ears. I glanced toward the glass, expecting only my reflection, the faint shape of my tired face in the dark. But what I saw wasn't a reflection. It was me. Not the kind of me you see in a mirror, warped slightly by glass, softened by distance. Number. This was sharper, clearer, as though she were lit from beneath by some hidden fire. My own face pressed against the outside of the window, my skin pale and ghostly under the moonlight. And she was smiling, wide, too wide, as though she knew a secret I was never meant to learn. My chest locked up. I couldn't breathe. For one terrifying heartbeat, I thought maybe the glass wasn't there at all, that if I lifted my hand, hers would meet mine, skin to skin, and then I'd know which one of us was real. But the worst part wasn't the smile, it was the eyes. Her eyes weren't mine. Not really. They were empty, like something had scooped the humanity out of them and left only the shell behind. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Seconds, minutes. Time broke apart in that moment. I wanted to scream, but my voice died in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs rooted themselves to the floor. All I could do was watch as it, slowly lifted a hand and placed it against the glass. My hand twitched at my side, an almost magnetic pull to mirror her. That's when I realized it wasn't copying me. It was waiting. And then, God help me, it tilted its head, just a fraction, like a predator deciding the best way to strike. If you ever see yourself staring in from the dark, run. Don't wait, don't blink, don't question it. Because what I saw outside that window, what wore my face, was not me. And to explain what happened that night, I have to start from the beginning. I grew up in a town that most people would drive through without ever learning its name. A scattering of houses, a gas station that closed before midnight, a diner with cracked red booths where the coffee was always lukewarm, but the waitress remembered your order by heart. It wasn't the kind of place that made headlines. It was safe, predictable, dull in that small town way people either long for or can't wait to escape. For me, it was just life. Most evenings followed the same rhythm. I'd come home from classes, toss my backpack onto the couch, and microwave something halfway edible. Then I'd scroll through my phone, half watching the glow of the TV while pretending to study. Some nights I worked a late shift at the diner, pulling refills for truckers and old couples who still believed in tips. Other nights it was just me in the house, quiet, uneventful, forgettable. If you had asked me then what I feared most, I would have said things like failing grades or being stuck in that town forever. Monsters, doppelgangers, faces outside windows. That was the stuff of movies, not reality. But sometimes, looking back, I wonder if the signs were already there. Like how the streets always seemed darker than they should have been, as though the lamps gave off light, but no warmth. Or how so many houses on my block kept their blinds pulled tight, even when the sun was out, like the people inside didn't want to see or be seen. There were nights when the silence pressed harder than usual. No barking dogs, no humming of crickets, just a heavy smothering quiet that settled over the neighborhood. At the time, I thought it was my imagination. I told myself every small town feels haunted if you stay out too late. Still, sometimes I caught myself staring too long into the darkened glass of my own windows, almost expecting something to move in the reflection. I'd shake it off, laugh at myself, and crank up the TV volume until the silence gave way to canned laughter. That night felt no different. I'd made a box of mac and cheese, the kind that stains the pot with neon yellow powder, and carried it to my room in a chipped ceramic bowl. I remember sitting cross-legged on my bed, spoon in hand, trying to balance studying with texting a friend about some stupid drama from class. My lamp cast a soft, safe glow across the room. Everything was ordinary. So ordinary, in fact, that I barely noticed the shadows thickening outside my window, or how the house seemed to creak a little too often, like someone shifting their weight on the floorboards just beyond my door. I wasn't afraid, not then, because nothing had happened yet. But later, when I thought about that night again and all the choices I made, I realized something I can't unlearn. I should never have been alone in that house. That night felt no different, until it was. The night slipped by the way most of them did, quiet, harmless, unremarkable. I had my earbuds in, music low enough that I could still pretend to study, though in reality I was just scrolling through posts and half laughing at stupid memes. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Don't forget to lock up before bed." I typed back a quick, "Yeah, of course," without thinking. A moment later, a notification popped from my best friend, Claire. She was on FaceTime, her hair wrapped up in a messy bun, ranting about some guy who'd been flirting with 2 girls at once. Her voice filled the silence in my room, and I was grateful for it. When she talked, the house didn't feel so heavy, so still, but even while she spoke, something tugged at my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, the glass of my window shimmered faintly, the way it does when headlights sweep past. Except there were no cars this late on our street. I glanced up, saw nothing but the dark yard and the crooked silhouette of the oak tree. "Are you even listening to me?" Claire laughed when she caught me looking away. "Yeah, totally." "He's a jerk," I muttered, though my eyes lingered on the glass. It was probably nothing. The wind catching the branches, maybe. I shook it off, focusing again on the phone screen, but then the shadows shifted once more, sliding across the wall in a way that didn't match the tree outside. I sat up straighter. Claire frowned. "What? Did something happen?" "No, just thought I saw something." My laugh was thin, unconvincing. "Probably the tree, or a neighbor walking their dog." But deep down, I knew that wasn't right. Nobody walked their dog at midnight in my neighborhood. Not anymore. I tried to push the unease aside, letting Claire's voice wash over me as she dove back into her story. Yet every few seconds, my eyes flicked back to the window. The darkness there wasn't just absence of light. It looked thick, almost like it was pressing up against the glass. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom, this time just 2 words. "Lock up." Something about it made my stomach twist. She never double texted like that. I typed back a thumbs up emoji, but my hand felt clammy against the screen. The silence outside grew louder, if that makes sense, like the world had gone still, holding its breath. And then I heard it, a sound so soft I almost convinced myself it hadn't happened. Tap, tap, tap at the window. I froze, phone clutched in my hand, Claire's voice suddenly distant in my ear. Because in that moment, I knew someone or something was already watching me. At first, I didn't move. I thought maybe I'd imagined the sound, that my brain had stitched together the groan of the house, the rustle of the oak tree, and my mother's text into some paranoid illusion. But then it came again, louder this time, unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. I turned my head slowly, every nerve in my body screaming not to look. And that's when I saw it. My own face, pressed flat against the glass. Peering in from the darkness, I went cold all over, the kind of cold that sinks deep, like your blood has turned to ice water. It wasn't like looking into a mirror. No, this face was sharper, harsher. My skin looked pale, almost gray, under the silver wash of moonlight. My hair hung in limp strands across my forehead, darker than it should have been. And the smile, God, the smile. It was too wide, stretched in a way a human mouth shouldn't bend. Teeth glistened, straight and perfect, but wrong in their perfection, like something that had studied human anatomy and built a smile from memory, but got the details twisted. My eyes locked on hers, and that was worse than anything else, because they weren't mine, not exactly. The color matched, the shape too, but there was something hollow, emptied out, like the spark had been scooped from behind the irises and replaced with a void that pretended at life. They stared at me the way a predator stares at prey, unblinking, patient, certain. Claire's voice buzzed faintly from my phone. "Hello, did you just freeze? What's going on?" I couldn't answer, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The thing outside didn't blink. It didn't shift, didn't fog the glass with breath. It just watched. That grin carved into its face, as though it were enjoying the sight of me unraveling. My fingers trembled, the phone slipping slightly in my grip. The sudden movement broke something between us, like a trigger being pulled, because at that exact second, the thing lifted its hand, my hand, and pressed it against the window. The sound was soft, the faint squeak of skin against glass, and every cell in my body screamed, "Don't touch it." Still, my own hand twitched at my side, aching to rise, to mirror it. Like some magnetic pull was dragging me toward the glass, demanding I line up my fingers with its. The temptation was stronger than fear for one heart-stopping instant. But I didn't move. It did. The head tilted, slow, deliberate, curious. That monstrous smile widened, splitting just a little further, too far. My stomach churned. A shiver rolled down my spine like icy fingers. And then it moved, but I didn't. The face pressed closer, flattening against the glass, cheekbones smearing pale against the pane. I heard the faintest creak, the sound of wood shifting in the window frame, as though the pressure were testing the limits. Claire's voice cut in again, sharp this time. "You're scaring me. What's happening? Say something." But I couldn't. If I spoke, if I acknowledged it, I felt like it would hear me, really hear me. And that thought was unbearable. The thing didn't blink, didn't breathe. It just stayed there, as if time itself had been swallowed whole. Finally, as though it had grown bored with my paralysis, it did something that broke me completely. It smiled wider, teeth glinting in the moonlight, and winked, a small casual gesture like we were sharing a secret. My stomach dropped, my knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, dragging the phone with me. Claire was shouting now, but her voice was nothing more than static in my ears. I clamped my hands over my face and prayed, when I looked again, it would be gone. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This was only the first time. By morning, everything looked normal. The window was clean, the glass clear, no fingerprints smeared across it, no pale face pressed against the pane. Just a reflection of sunlight and the quiet street outside. For a few dizzy minutes, I convinced myself I'd dreamed it all. Maybe I'd dozed off with Claire on the call, the shadows in my half-sleep twisting into something they weren't. But when I reached for my phone, reality pulled the rug out from under me. The call log showed I'd been connected with Claire for over an hour. And the last few minutes? Just silence on my end. Her voice recorded in jagged fragments. "Say something. Please, what's going on?" Before I'd hung up. When I texted her later, she didn't mince words. "Claire, you scared the crap out of me last night." "Claire, I thought someone broke in." "Claire, why didn't you answer?" I typed and deleted my reply 3 times before settling on "bad connection." Fell asleep after. Sorry, it wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't the truth either. I told myself I'd forget, that it was just my brain playing tricks. That nightmarish grin still lingered at the edges of my mind, though, like the afterimage of a camera flash, burned into my eyes. When I finally sat up and flipped my phone camera to check my face, my heart stuttered. For a split second, the image lagged, the real me not syncing with the screen. And in that split second, I swear my reflection smiled even though my mouth was shut tight. I dropped the phone onto my bed like it had burned me. When I picked it back up, everything looked normal. Just me. Tired eyes, messy hair, no wide grin stretched across my face. Still, the pit in my stomach stayed. I thought telling someone would help, that maybe if I said it out loud, it would sound as crazy as it felt, and I could laugh it off. At dinner, I told my mom I'd seen something strange at the window. I didn't say it looked like me, just that someone was there. She gave me that look parents reserve for kids who still check under their beds. "Honey, this town is safe." "You've probably been overworking yourself. Dreams feel real sometimes, especially when you don't sleep enough." I wanted to argue, but the words died in my throat. If I told her the truth, that I saw myself staring back, she'd never let me live it down. The days that followed blurred together, but the strangeness only grew sharper. My phone glitched more often. Photos came out blurred, warped, like the camera couldn't decide which face to focus on. Once, I snapped a selfie in good light, and when I looked at it later, I nearly screamed, because there were two of me in the frame, one in the foreground, holding the phone, and one just behind over my shoulder, grinning wide enough to split skin. I deleted it instantly, though my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted proof, something I could show Claire, show Mom, anything to convince myself I wasn't unraveling, but every time I tried, the evidence slipped through my fingers, as though the thing knew when I was watching. Because that's what I was starting to believe. It wasn't just an accident. It chose when to appear, and it chose who could see it. At least that's what I told myself, because no one believed me until someone finally did. But someone else finally saw it too. When you're losing your grip on reality, the first place you go is the internet. I started with a half-hearted Google search, seeing yourself outside the window hallucination. The results were predictable: psychology blogs, dream interpretations, clickbait articles about sleep paralysis. Nothing close to what I'd experienced. Nothing that explained how my reflection had smiled when I hadn't. But when I dug deeper, something shifted. On Reddit, buried in the r/NoSleep archives, I found a thread titled, "I Saw Myself Staring Back at Me." The post had only a few upvotes, but the comments were what froze me. Same thing happened to me last winter. Thought it was my brother until I realized I was alone. It smiled at me too. Mine knocked on the glass. Don't ever let it in. I mean it. I tried clicking the usernames, but half of them were deleted accounts, like they'd been scrubbed clean. That's when I widened the net. Forums, conspiracy blogs, even those ugly black background websites that look like they've been rotting since the early 2000s. I found fragments everywhere. On a paranormal board, someone had written, "It looked like me but wasn't." The longer I watched, the more wrong it became. Another, "They don't reflect light the way we do." The creepier part? Some of the posts ended mid-sentence, like the person had stopped typing and never come back. "If you see it, don't..." And then nothing. It was like chasing a trail of breadcrumbs that ended in an open pit. The deeper I went, the more desperate I felt. Each time I thought I'd found someone describing exactly what I'd seen, the post would vanish the next day. Links broke, screenshots wouldn't load, threads disappeared. It wasn't just paranoia. I checked my own browsing history. Half of the pages weren't even listed anymore, like the internet itself wanted to erase them. But I kept records. I screenshotted everything I could before it slipped away, and one comment, one I managed to save before it vanished, still haunts me. "It's not you. It's what wants to be you." I read that line over and over again until the words lost shape, until they blurred on the screen. My stomach turned cold because it explained what I couldn't put into words: the smile, the wrongness, the way it seemed to study me like prey. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't even a copy. It was something pretending, something trying. The realization lodged in me like a shard of glass, cutting deeper the more I thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I noticed little things in my day-to-day life. People waving at me across the street when I hadn't left the house. A neighbor swearing she saw me walking home late, even though I'd been in bed all night. My skin prickled with the question I didn't want to ask. What if it wasn't always outside the glass? I wanted to tell someone, Claire, my mom, anyone. But what could I say? Hey, there's another me wandering around, and strangers online keep disappearing when they mention it too. Number, I kept it to myself. But the screenshots, I saved them. I backed them up on a flash drive hidden in my desk. Proof that I wasn't alone, proof that others had seen it before me, and proof that most of them never got the chance to warn anyone else. It didn't stay in the shadows. At first, I told myself the daylight was safe, that sunlight would burn away the nightmares the way it always does. But I was wrong. That's when it started showing itself more often, as if the dark was just training wheels, and now it had learned how to stand in plain view. The first time was in my bathroom mirror. I was brushing my teeth before class, foam dripping from my mouth, when I noticed something off. My reflection was a beat behind me. I spat into the sink, and it didn't. My hand dropped, and it kept brushing. Then, slowly, it turned its head to look at me, toothpaste still foaming between clenched teeth. I dropped the brush. By the time I blinked, the reflection was back to normal, copying me exactly. After that, I started catching it everywhere. Shop windows, car doors, even the dark screen of my laptop when it went to sleep. Sometimes, the reflection's eyes lingered a little too long. Sometimes the smile curled a little too wide, like a rehearsal for a part it hadn't mastered yet. I stopped looking in mirrors altogether, but that didn't help, because the real nightmare began when other people saw it too. Claire came over one afternoon to study sprawled across my bed while I tapped away on my laptop. At some point, she went quiet, too quiet. When I looked up, she was staring at my window, her hand frozen halfway to her phone. "Claire," I asked, her face drained of color, "why are you sitting over there?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" Her voice cracked. She pointed at the glass. "You're outside." My stomach plunged. I forced myself to look, and there it was. My face pressed against the glass again, lips pulled into that obscene grin, eyes glistening like wet stones. Claire scrambled off the bed, backing into the corner. "What the hell is that?" she screamed. I couldn't answer. I couldn't move, because this time it wasn't just me who saw it. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The glass showed nothing but my trembling reflection and Claire's pale face behind me. She didn't wait. She grabbed her bag and bolted, nearly tripping over herself in her rush to get out of my room. I chased her to the front door, my throat raw. "Claire, wait." Please, but she didn't. She wouldn't even look at me. When I checked my phone later, she hadn't texted, not a word. That night I sat awake in the dark, too afraid to blink, too afraid to breathe, because the thing had changed. It wasn't satisfied with peeking through glass anymore. It wanted more. And that's when I realized it was learning me. Every lagging reflection, every crooked grin, it was practice, rehearsals. It was memorizing me, piece by piece, until one day, it wouldn't lag. It wouldn't grin wrong. It wouldn't be trapped behind glass. It would be perfect. I thought about that one comment I'd saved, the one that vanished after I screenshotted it. "It's not you. It's what wants to be you." And another line I'd read on one of those buried forums surfaced in my mind, one I hadn't wanted to believe until now. They say once it copies your smile, it's too late. When fear eats at you long enough, it stops being a scream and starts being an obsession. I couldn't just sit in my room waiting for my reflection to grin at me again. I needed answers, any answers. I buried myself in old books, folklore archives, late-night podcasts that sounded half mad. Mirrors had always carried stories, portals, curses, reflections stealing your soul. Witches were said to trap enemies in glass, spirits lingering in pools of water. Every culture had some version of the warning. The thing you see might not be you. The more I read, the more the pieces connected in ways I didn't want them to. There were different names for it. The fetch, the Vardagger, the double. Some called it a mimic spirit, others swore it was a harbinger of death. But they all agreed on one thing. Once you see it, it's already chosen you. I found fragments of rules, too, rituals whispered in obscure corners of the internet. If it knocks, never open. If it speaks, never answer. Never ever break eye contact first. One forum thread, long deleted now, read like the diary of a man unraveling. His posts came daily at first, then hours apart, then minutes. He described the same lags in the mirror, the same grinning face at the window. His last post was only 3 words. "It's inside now." After that, nothing. His account vanished. I couldn't stop reading, even when the words clawed at my sanity, even when I woke in the night certain I'd heard a soft knock against the glass. I kept scrolling, kept saving screenshots before they disappeared. The warnings looped in my head like a mantra. If it knocks, never open. If it speaks, never answer. And then one night it spoke. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the house heavy with silence. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up without thinking, expecting a text from Claire, maybe an apology, maybe something to break the distance growing between us. But it wasn't a text. It was a voice, my voice. "Hey," it whispered, muffled, as though coming from the other side of the glass. I froze. My heart slammed so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I sat up, phone in hand, staring at the dark window across the room. "Please," it said again, soft and pleading, the same tone I used when I wanted someone to believe me. "Don't leave me out here." Tears stung my eyes. It sounded exactly like me, not wrong, not distorted, perfect. And my first horrible instinct was to answer, to whisper back. I opened my mouth, but the rules echoed in my head. If it speaks, never answer. I clamped my jaw shut, fists clenched until my nails dug into my palms. The silence stretched long and suffocating. Finally, from the dark, the voice shifted. It chuckled, a low, broken sound that bent into a grin I couldn't see, and then it stopped. The house fell quiet again, as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. The rules didn't help when you were already in too deep, and I'd almost broken the most important one, because I almost answered. And I don't know what would have happened if I had, but I think it's only waiting for me to slip. The last thing she told me was that it smiled as the glass broke. That night, I couldn't pretend anymore. Every curtain was drawn tight, every light left burning, yet I still felt it, just beyond the glass, watching, waiting. The air was heavy with a pressure I couldn't describe, like the whole house was holding its breath. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, the rules echoing in my skull like a prayer. If it knocks, never open. If it speaks, never answer. And then, knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps against my window. I flinched so hard I dropped the phone. My breath fogged in the air, though the heater hummed low in the corner. Slowly, with every ounce of courage I didn't feel, I turned my head toward the sound. There it was, my face, my body, my hair falling the same way across my shoulders, pressed against the glass, grinning wide enough to split me in half. But this time, it moved in perfect sync. When I lifted my hand, it lifted too. When I swallowed hard, its throat bobbed at the same rhythm. No lag, no glitches. Only the smile was wrong, stretched to a breaking point, teeth too sharp in the glow of the streetlight. Then it knocked again, harder this time. The pain rattled. "Please," it whispered, and my blood froze. The voice was mine, not close, not almost, mine, down to the cracks and tremors of my fear. "Please let me in. I'm so cold." My lips parted before I could stop them, my throat tightening with the instinct to respond, to mirror myself back. But I bit down hard, the taste of iron filling my mouth. "Don't answer, don't answer." The thing's smile widened until its cheeks split, bloodless and raw, but it didn't flinch. It leaned closer, its breath fogging the glass, mingling with mine. "Don't you trust me?" it asked. "I am you." My nails dug into my palms. The room felt smaller, the air sharp and thin. Crack! A thin fracture ran across the glass where its forehead pressed. My chest seized. It wasn't waiting for me to break the rule. It was going to break its way in. "Stop," I whispered before I could catch myself. The words slipped out, soft, desperate. Its grin faltered, only for a heartbeat. Then it laughed. "You answered." My heart plummeted. I stumbled backward, kicking over my chair, the screech of wood on floorboards drowned out by another sharp crack in the glass. The fissure spread like a spiderweb, each line splitting into more, groaning under the weight of what pressed against it. It tilted its head, and for the first time its eyes weren't quite mine. They were darker, hungrier. "Almost perfect," it murmured, and the sound of my own voice twisted into something alien. I reached the door, fumbling for the handle, but I couldn't tear my gaze away, because deep down I knew if I looked away first, it would step through. The glass groaned again, bowing inward. My reflection's hand pressed flat against it, and I swear I felt the cold seeping into my skin. My own hand rose without thinking, trembling, an inch from the pain. If it knocks, never open. If it speaks, never answer. The rules thundered through my mind, useless now, because I'd already broken them. "Please," it whispered again, almost tender. "Don't leave me out here alone." The fracture split down the center with a sharp gunshot crack. Shards trembled, ready to fall. My hand hovered over the lock, and that's where the memory ends. Some say I opened it, some say the glass shattered first. All I know is that the last thing I saw was its smile, my smile, stretching wide as the night rushed in. Check your window tonight, just in case. That was her story. Every word she managed to leave behind before things ended, or maybe changed. I can't tell you for certain, because no one can say what really happened after that last night. Was it her hand that opened the lock, or was it the glass that gave way first? Did she survive, or was she replaced? What I do know is this: she wasn't the only one. The posts she found, the fragments scattered across forgotten forums and buried comment threads, they weren't fabrications. I've seen some of them myself just before they vanished, and if you're listening closely, if you've stayed until the end of her story, then maybe you felt it too. That chill at the back of your neck when you pass a dark window, that flicker in the corner of your eye when your reflection seems a little too slow. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's learning you too. If you've ever seen your own face staring at you from the other side of the glass, you need to say something. Tell us in the comments. Share your story, your theory, your warning, because silence only helps them. And from everything she left behind, one thing is certain: it chooses who can see it. That means if you're seeing this now, if the words are sticking in your chest like hooks, you've already been noticed. So talk, speak before it does, because once it copies your smile, well, she might not be the only one.